ally of America, they cannot be a friend of China. That's the popular belief. That's how they see it. And Beijing is feeding into this. If China wants, it can censor the hate speech. It can also get its mouthpieces to focus on the relationship with Israel. It's doing none of this. From the wrong maps to the skewed public opinion, all of it has China's tacit support. And Israel should take note. The Prime Minister should take note. In 2017, remember, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited China and he described the relationship as a marriage made in heaven. That's common, not age-dependent. So China is backing Palestine. Meanwhile, Europe cannot make up its mind. And I must say it's not surprising. We're talking about 27 countries here. 27 countries are part of the European Union. All of them have a different role in this conflict. So consensus is hard. But forget country-to-country differences. Even within governments, there is no consensus. You may remember this minister from Spain. Her name is Ione Belarra. She's a staunch critic of Israel. The Israeli government asked Spain to rein her in, but Madrid is doing the very opposite. The minister is now doubling down. Listen to her latest comments.
He called to suspend diplomatic relations with Israel, apply economic sanctions against Netanyahu and the entire political leadership. Also carry out an arms embargo and, of course, bring Netanyahu before the International Criminal Court, where he can be tried for what he is, a war criminal.
She wants Netanyahu to be sanctioned, to be dragged to the International Criminal Court, and she's not alone. Israel's actions have divided European governments, not just in the EU, but even outside. In Britain, a lawmaker of the ruling party has been fired from his job. His name is Paul Bristol. He was working as a ministerial aide, but last week he wrote a letter to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and in that letter, he called for a ceasefire in Gaza. Days later, he got fired. Same with the Labour MP, Andy MacDonald. He spoke at a pro-Palestine rally recently. He was later accused of anti-Israel hate. So the Labour Party had to suspend him. But the party itself is split. Their leader, Keir Starmer, says it is not the time for a ceasefire. But his senior MP is disagreeing. At least 35 of them are demanding a ceasefire, including 13 shadow ministers. Now these divisions are all internal. The leadership can iron them out. What they cannot iron out are differences at the European Union. We have multiple camps there. The likes of Germany and Austria are Team Israel. You can understand why. Their actions led to Jews being driven out of Europe, so now they support Israel, Germany and Austria. Another camp supports Palestine. This includes Ireland, Spain, Portugal, and Luxembourg. You don't mind criticizing Israel. And finally, you have the third camp, the centrists. This includes the likes of France and the Netherlands. They don't mind a ceasefire, but they believe in Israel's right to self-defense. These differences were exposed at two recent events. One was the EU summit. The second was the UN General Assembly vote. Let's deal with the EU summit first. Germany was completely opposed to the word ceasefire. So the EU leaders debated the next best thing, a humanitarian pause. But even then, one issue remained. Would it be humanitarian pauses or just a pause? That's right, EU leaders could not agree on plural or singular, pauses or pause. It tells you how deep the divisions run. Same thing happened at the United Nations. The General Assembly was debating a ceasefire resolution. Just look at how the results panned out. Austria, Czechia, Hungary, and Croatia opposed the ceasefire. They voted no. Germany, Poland, Italy, and the Netherlands abstained. France, Portugal, and Spain agreed to it. They wanted a ceasefire. Now try making sense of this. Every major European power has a different position. Forget same page, they're not even on the same book. The question is why? And the reason, one of the reasons is history. Like I said, Germany has a reason to support Israel. Likewise, Ireland has a reason to support Palestine. Their leaders often talk about shared struggles. But beyond history, there are contemporary reasons as well. We can think of four of them. Number one, the domestic support for Palestine. You've seen major protests across European capitals in London, Berlin, Madrid, Rome. And these protests influence leaders. After all, they have elections to win. Reason number two, overburden. There's already a war happening in Europe. The one between Ukraine and Russia. So all their focus is on supporting and funding Kiev. There is little appetite for another one. Reason number 3, fears of radicalism. European countries are on alert. Most of them fear lone wolf attacks by radical Islamists. Similarly, anti-Semitism is on the rise. France has reported dozens of incidents. Germany has seen a 240% rise in anti-Semitism since the 7th of October. It's 300% in Austria. And in Britain, cases have risen 13 times. If this war escalates, things could get worse. And finally, reason number 4, a wider war could hurt their economies. And oil is a major reason for that. Europe imports very little energy from Russia now, so their exposure to West Asia is much more. They buy around 1.4 million barrels of crude per day. 1.4 million every day. That's 600,000 more than before the Ukraine war. So a spillover will hurt Europe. It will hurt their energy supply, and right now they cannot afford that. Experts are warning of a European recession this year. The GDP of 20 EU countries fell by 0.1% this quarter, meaning their economies contracted. And if that happens again, it will be a technical recession. 2 straight contractions mean a recession. So Europe has its own balancing act now. History on one side, and modern day politics and economics on the other. Now to Pakistan and its grim headlines. Poor showing in the World Cup. Apparently the cricket team has not been paid for 5 months. The economy remains in crisis. Inflation is still at a record high. There's a shortage of food and power and a rise in terror attacks. Now most of these problems are Pakistan's own doing. It invested in terror factories. It used terrorism as a state policy, and now those chickens are coming home to roost. But instead of dealing with the root cause, Pakistan has found a new target, refugees. Yes, Pakistan has refugees too, mostly from Afghanistan. Now Pakistan blames them for its problems and it wants to deport them. The decision was made on the 3rd of October. It came from Pakistan's caretaker government. They set a 28-day deadline for illegal immigrants. Leave the country or you will be deported. That deadline ends tomorrow. And tens of thousands of Afghan refugees are leaving. Those who are not, are
If we can arrange the fare, we will leave within 5
Oh,
to
let's
6
slow
days.
that down.
But it is winter in our region there. 6 months are so cold there, and God knows how these kids will tell you. Our house there is also broken. We don't have any room to live. Living in a tent in winter will be very difficult.
My husband is too scared to go out. A few days back I fell sick. My medicine was not available in the nearby market, but he did not go to get the medicine. He says he cannot go out because the police may catch him.
So how many Afghan refugees does Pakistan have? Why are they being sent back now? And what is the Taliban doing about this? Let's begin with the first question. Pakistan and Afghanistan share a long border. It is 2,670 kilometers long. It is called the Durand Line. It was drawn in 1893 by a British diplomat called Mortimer Dooley. And like all borders drawn by the Brits, this too is contested. Every time there's a war in Afghanistan, thousands flee to Pakistan. The biggest wave of migration happened during the Soviet occupation. That was between 1979 to 1989. Another wave of refugees came during Taliban's first stint in power. It began in 1996. Then in 2021, there was another wave of migration. That's when the Taliban took over Afghanistan for the second time. You know how many people left? Some 700,000. They fled Pakistan in 2021 and since then. So put together, there are 3.7 million refugees, 3.7 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan. Most of them live in one province, the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. 1.3 million are registered as refugees. Another 800,000 have legal status to stay, which leaves us with 1.6 million more people. They do not have a refugee status. So as per the law, they cannot stay in Pakistan. But they say they don't want to return to Afghanistan.
There is chaos in the Afghan camps in Karachi.
and the people are not leaving their home, they are not leaving their community, the children are not going to their school, the students are not going to their colleges, the youngsters are not going to their job, people are not going to their businesses, and because they have a fear of becoming a victim of state harassment.
Now, these refugees have been living in Pakistan for years, so why has Islamabad suddenly decided to throw them out? Because they're a convenient group to blame. You see, Pakistan is suffering at the hands of terrorists it nurtured. In the last 1 year, Pakistan has had 24 suicide bombings. 14 of them were linked to the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, also known as the Pakistani Taliban. And the name itself is telling. Pakistan played a crucial role in raising the Taliban, especially in the early 2000s during the US occupation of Afghanistan. That's when Pakistan gave refuge to the Taliban. And the TTP is a byproduct of that relationship. The TTP was born in Pakistan, its leaders were trained in Pakistan, and now the same group is attacking Pakistan. Like I said, it's Islamabad's own doing. But instead of eradicating terrorism, it is targeting refugees, using them as a bargaining chip. And here's the deal. If Kabul raids in the TTP, Islamabad will not threaten to displace Afghan refugees. And what does the Taliban have to say? The last year they did try to mediate. They brokered talks between Pakistan and the TTP, which led to a ceasefire, but it lasted only for 5 months. In August, the Taliban supreme leader issued a decree. He forbade any cross-border attacks. In September, the Taliban even detained 200 TTP fighters in Pakistan. It's not enough because the attacks continue. So now they're resorting to a pressure tactic, threatening to deport tens of thousands of Afghans. The Taliban have called the decision inhumane. They say it will dent Afghan-Pakistan relations. Islamabad has downplayed these tensions. It has called them, and I'm quoting, mere rivalry between cousins. If Pakistan decides to stick to the deadline, this rivalry could turn ugly. And it could change the Taliban's relationship with Pakistan forever. Our next story is about a new weapon, America's secret weapon, its most powerful nuclear bomb. The Pentagon is building it. It would cost about $10 billion, and it would be 24 times more powerful than the bomb dropped at Hiroshima during the Second World War. The US is ready with a plan. It is awaiting congressional approval, reporting its fair share of controversies. But why does America need such a weapon? And how will its adversaries respond? Does this mark a new phase in the nuclear arms race? Our next report brings you all the answers.
The year was 1945. The Second World War was raging. In August, it opened a devastating chapter in world history. The US became the first country to use an atomic bomb in war. It dropped the first bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. About 140,000 people died. 3 days later, the US detonated a second atomic bomb, this time on the city of Nagasaki, killing about 74,000 people. It was catastrophic. Cut to today. The US Department of Defense has released a statement. It plans to build a new nuclear bomb called the B-6113. It will be one of the largest and strongest bombs in America's nuclear stockpile. To give you an idea, the B-6113 will be 24 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, which is a 15 kilogram